Thank you so much for joining us. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month, which is amazing that this conversation is being had in our own minority communities and all over the world. And we're here with a music legend, over 25 years in the music business industry. Shanti started off with LaFace Records, worked with Outkast, Usher, TLC, Tony Braxton in the promotions and marketing departments, and then went on to other reputable and prestigious record labels, and also executive VP at Universal Motown. Tell us about how you were able to go from helping people brand themselves and their passion to helping them internally, the advocacy aspect of what you do now.
Absolutely. So thank you for that introduction. And I too am a fan of your work. So congratulations on all that you've done. I used to watch you on the news here in Atlanta. So it's exciting to talk to you today.
I appreciate that. And I interviewed you and CeeLo last year.
I remember.
Yeah.
So to give you a little bit of my background, even prior to music, my dad took his own life when I was 7 months old. And, you know, we grew up in Southwest Atlanta, growing up in African American culture. You know, we didn't talk a lot about what had happened. I remember seeing my mom, you know, just cry for days, but she didn't really tell us what was going on because I guess she was trying to shield us from some of that. But as we got older, you know, we just stopped talking about it. And I even was angry at my father. I didn't even let my mom bring my dad's name up. So I kind of hid a lot of those feelings. So fast forward to my career in entertainment, you know, I had a great run in the 90s. Then when I moved to New York City, things got to be a little bit more stressful working in more of a corporate environment in music. And I didn't really understand how to process through my feelings. And so I went through some real challenges in 2001. And I remember uttering the words, maybe I should just kill myself. And although I didn't have any intent on doing that, it scared me that I even said those words because of what had happened with my father. So that was probably the first time that I went to counseling in my early 30s. Went for about, 2 or 3 months. I thought I was fine. And I went back to, my normal life in the music business and kept climbing the ladder, moving on to Columbia Records and Universal Motown Records. But then I decided to quit at the top of my game and come back home. My mom developed Alzheimer's. I had a lot of health issues. And then over the years, being back home, I went through my own, struggles of should I have left the business? I wanted to do more community service work. My best friend took her own life in 2014, which that really, I would say, kind of was like a breaking point for me. And I blamed myself in a lot of ways, although I know it was not my fault. But I had talked to her the day before it happened, and I kept trying to figure out, what didn't I see? What were some of the signs that I could have, caught early on? And then in 2015, I came close to taking my own life. I think, some people know my story, and I'm just grateful that now I can share openly and that I've been able to reach back into entertainment and talk to artists from an emotional health and wellness perspective. We do work all around Atlanta, all around the nation. I even speak internationally, but to be able to tap back into the music community and help, fellow musicians and executives has really been a blessing.
How have you been able to tap into your own struggle to create the Silence the Shame initiative, right? Started just a few years ago, but it's making so much impact all over the world. How are you able to say, okay, I'm going to start being vulnerable. I am going to start sharing my own story? Because even if in our own African-American communities, the relationship between grief and Black excellence oftentimes is not a good one, because you're told, honey, go pray about it. God got you, Jesus, Allah. But, at the same time, you also may, in addition to God, you may also need professional help. But tell us about how you were able to tap into your story to create the brand that you have now created.
So I would probably say in 2017, we did a launch in May for Mental Health Awareness Month. And well, actually, let me go back. In 2016, I reached out to a friend of mine, Blue Williams, who manages Nick Cannon with some of the work that he does. And I was just having a casual conversation with them and just talking about mental health and the fact that I felt like we needed to speak up more about it. And Nick was like, I've had people in my family that have experienced mental health challenges before, so let me know what you need. So he became kind of like our first entertainment ambassador, if you will. So we did a soft launch. And then in 2017, I decided to make up my own day. I said, I'm going to make May 5th National Silence the Shame Day. So we created a little graphic for social media. We got 90 million impressions in one day. And we had everybody from Candy Burris to Big Boy to Usher. Everybody was posting about it, a lot of actors. So it was a really like aha moment for me, if you will. And I felt like, you know, maybe I can tap back into my former career and really bring up this notion of wellness in entertainment, which oftentimes it goes overlooked. You know, we are big on team hashtag no sleep in music and flying here and living out of suitcases, which is all great. I don't have any regrets, but at the same time, I don't think, you know, 10 years ago that people were really talking about getting enough sleep and self-care and wellness. And now I'm glad that it's actually a thing. And unfortunately, because of COVID-19, you know, I think there's a heightened level of anxiety amongst everyone, and especially in the entertainment industry. So I just started calling on friends and colleagues, you know. Shout out to Daytwan, shout out to Sarita. You know, a lot of people were just always very supportive. And I've also been able to create Yeah Wellness, which is some wellness check-ins that I do on my IG, you know, through COVID-19, just checking in with celebrities. So, you know, it's just great. I'm just grateful because we live and work in a relationship economy. So to know that I've been able to call back on some of those past relationships that I cultivated for many years and to see people be really supportive is quite humbling, and I'm very appreciative.
For anyone who's tuned in right now, who may be experiencing that moment of darkness where they may not see the light at the end of the tunnel, what was it for you that helped you in your healing process? Because on the outside, successful, strong Black woman, resilience with a lot of audacity, you know, amazing in the music business industry. But, you know, there's entrepreneurship and then there's innerpreneurship. And that's,
I like that,
a lot of work. You know, for anyone out there right now who may be seeking help, what was it for you that was that pivotal moment?
So I think the pivotal moment and turning point for me was really turning to someone that I trusted. So we talk a lot about in mental health about prioritizing relationships, being able to connect with people that are trustworthy, right? That don't judge you, people that are empathetic, and people that are understanding. And when I was going through my suicidal ideation that night, I turned to my sister, who unfortunately passed away last year, but she was always at the center of my life. And so you got to have somebody in your corner, if you will, or in your circle of friends and influence that you can call, you can be unapologetic about how you're feeling, whether it's good or bad, somebody that won't judge you. And she convinced me to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-TALK. And at the same time, you mentioned earlier about praying your problems away. I'm a member of Ebenezer. Hi, Taylor. And so I ended up reaching out to my pastor that same night when I was really in turmoil. And I told my pastor, like, I'm having some really dark thoughts and it's not good. And of course, I went on to tell him more. And he said, I'll pray with you, but you got to get help. You need to go to the doctor. So we'll pray together, right? But we'll pray and ask God to allow you to have the wherewithal to seek help and get the treatment that you needed. And the very next day, I literally woke up and I was at 8 a.m. service and I cried like a baby. I sobbed, thanking God that I was alive to even be at church that day, because had I stayed home that night, I don't know what I would have done. And so I leaned on my faith, and I leaned on people that I knew cared about me, that could push me to get the help that I needed.
And you're really helping the conversation become mainstream in our own hip hop industry, in our own minority, immigrant, international communities. Since you started, what kind of feedback have you received from people all over the world?
It has been humbling. I got to tell you, just last year, there's a small organization called Basic Needs Watch in Kenya. And they do a lot of anti-stigma work. Yes, in Kenya.
Yes, I visited last year.
And I can't wait to go once things, you know, get safe again. But the fact that a small organization in Kenya is like utilizing Silence the Shame, the hashtag. There's an organization in Australia that's been utilizing our hashtag. I spoke at a hip hop conference in 2018 in Amsterdam. Also last year, I was the only woman of color to give a keynote at a mental health conference in Belfast, Ireland. So, I mean, people are like supporting in London. I have friends in London. I'm actually speaking on a webinar for employees of the Sony UK music staff next week. I mean, it's just been, from a global perspective, like overwhelming and humbling. And we have so much more work to do. We want to have offices all over the world one day. We are a small but mighty organization. And I'm just praying that you know, God gives us what we need from an abundant standpoint and allows us to take this message around the world so we can heal as many people as possible.
And I'm so glad you brought up Kenya, because my family moved to the United States in 1996 from Somalia. So Somalia civil war, we had to leave, and then we sought refuge in Kenya. And then from Kenya, we moved to Atlanta. So from East Africa to East Atlanta, quite the transition. It was like the coming to America experience, except, you know, there was no royalty.
Right.
McDonald's was a real thing. It wasn't a fake job. We were actually working. But, you know, for us in the immigrant community, it's the same issue, except, you know, immigrant trauma is real. When you escape civil war, it's real, you know, and then mental resettlement issues is real, because you may be safe in a new land, but you may not have processed that you've settled into safety. Yes. So that's a conversation I'm trying to start in our own immigrant communities to specifically deal with the trauma that they have faced that has given them PTSD. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, how does your message relate to someone in the music industry and someone in a small refugee in Kenya?
So that's a great question. And I'd love to talk to you offline about we do a lot of community conversations within Silence the Shame. Of course, we've been doing them virtually, but trauma and PTSD is something that, you know, I want to spend more time on. I actually had a conversation with G Herbo last week. His album is entitled PTSD. So I think there are definitely some synergies there. So we should talk about it from an immigrant perspective. But I think trauma is trauma, right? Whether you're talking about someone who is an immigrant, who is dealing with resettlement issues in another country, in another land, or you're talking about trauma from a child who's growing up on the south side of Chicago, or in some of our most vulnerable communities and populations in the United States, you know, seeing friends get shot right in front of you, or your mother or your uncle. You know, you're going to experience, you know, whether it's nightmares or different things that could trigger, you know, you and take you right back to that moment. And if you've never either received therapy or any kind of treatment or anything to help you process through that trauma, you're going to re-experience it. And so I think, again, trauma is the same, right, in terms of what the type of effect that it can have on so many of us. And so I just think the important thing that we have to take from this is, when you experience those types of situations, don't be afraid to go see a therapist, because you have to talk through all of that, and you have to learn what those triggers are so that you can have healthy coping mechanisms to process through them.
What are the signs people should look out for? Even if a person that they love may not show all the habits or all the signs that they need help, what signs should people look out for within their circles, their family, their friends, their coworkers?
So it's a lot of different signs. I think some of the signs are different, whether you're talking about anxiety or depression or trauma. One thing I will say is, when people are feeling hopeless and they start giving away their belongings, that's a sign. Oftentimes too, some of our younger kids, they act out of anger, and their personalities are just different, so you can't really recognize them. I think that's a warning sign. When people sometimes are turning to recreational drugs as a coping mechanism, usually there's something that has triggered that behavior pattern or that action. And I would just encourage people to go to NAMI.org, and you can type in you know, PTSD, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and you can get a long list of all the different, you know, signs and symptoms and treatments that are available.
For anyone out there who may say, therapy is expensive, I have just enough money to survive, I got bills to pay, food to put on the table, minimum wage, I can't afford it. And that's a mindset that a lot of people have. But for anyone out there who may think that way, what do you say to them?
So that's a very real question. And I certainly say, prior to COVID, you know, some people did have issues getting access to therapists and psychiatrists. But I think right now, a lot of clinicians are virtual. Well, most of them are doing virtual services right now, and a lot of them are charging a lot less. Some clinicians charge on a sliding scale, which means that it's based on your salary. And I think with COVID-19, you'll find that some clinicians are also doing free therapy sessions. Like Taraji P. Henson's foundation has been giving away free therapy sessions. So I would, you know, encourage you to Google her foundation. It's the Boris Henson Foundation. Also, go to therapyforblackgirls.com if you're looking for a therapist, or psychologytoday.com. Even in the Atlanta area, Grady Hospital has a behavioral health program. So I would encourage you, wherever you're located, to call your local hospital and see if they have a behavioral health outreach program. Because the one good thing about Grady's behavioral health program is they will see you. And even if you don't have insurance, they won't deny you. Okay. So help is out there, but sometimes you got to remove your ego from it. You know, sometimes people might say, oh, I don't want to go to Grady. What's wrong? Because it's a public hospital. Nothing is wrong with that. If you need help, you need help. So don't be embarrassed about it. But there are free services out there. It just may require a little bit of research on your part. But make Google your best friend, because you'd be surprised to see what type of services are available and free. And you can certainly go to our website, SilenceTheShame.com, and go click on resources to find some other advocacy organizations out there that may be able to help.
And Shanti, I'll be completely honest, I have not been to therapy yet. I've been wanting to. I don't know, for some reason, I keep putting it off. I don't know if I need help. I don't know. But at the same time, I don't know, once those layers get peeled back, what it could reveal.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between someone thinking I need immediate help, or should you go even when you think you're okay?
So that's a great question. It really, I can't tell you what to do for you, but what I can say is oftentimes people don't realize the benefits of therapy, even when something isn't wrong.
Right.
And so I would just encourage people to look at it as like a wellness check, like anything else. Don't be afraid of it. Try it out and see how it works for you. The other thing too with therapy is sometimes people will go and they may not connect with the therapist, and then they may give up on it and just say, oh, you know what, I tried it, I'm not going to do it anymore. But that shouldn't be the case either. You should, keep going until you find the right fit. That's just like any other doctor, your primary healthcare physician, your OBGYN or whatever. You keep going until you find the person that has the right bedside manners for you and that works for you. And I will say, I wish I had gone to therapy a lot sooner, because yes, I did need to pull back some of those layers, and it can be scary at times, but I think by addressing it now, you're, dealing with something that could potentially, manifest into more serious issues in the future. So it's best to deal with your issues in the present.
And I'm so glad that mental health is part of the mainstream, part of our culture, the way you talk about it, the way Charlamagne talks about it, the way so many other hip hop artists talks about it. Back then, did you ever envision it would get to a point where, it's now part of the culture that we love?
No, I didn't initially, and I still think there's a stigma around it. A lot of people are talking about it, but that doesn't mean people are seeking help or treatment. So we still have a long way to go. But yeah, shout out to people like Charlamagne and so many other people that are really moving the needle. Dr. Jess, a lot of people in hip hop culture that are really doing their part, and Taraji P. Henson. But no, I never thought that it would be a part of, everyday conversations that we're having. I do certainly think that COVID-19 has really caused everybody, whether it's in hip hop community or otherwise around the globe, to understand the importance of mental health. Right. Because with, us losing so many loved ones and experiencing grief and loss and losing our finances, losing our jobs, there's a heightened level of anxiety around the world. So like it or not, mental health, I think, is here to stay, and it's going to be a conversation that we're all going to have to, deal with at some point or another. And I tell people we all have mental health, but we may not all have a mental illness. So the more you can do to educate yourself around it, the better you can help your family, your colleagues, and people in our, in your community.
And from a timely standpoint, I hope that we can address this. Black men are having a hard time processing what happened in Brunswick, Georgia. What advice do you have for Black men who may feel as if in their own country that they love, they may be targets, or the way mentally this case is being processed? We're seeing it play out on social media. We're seeing the outrage. We're seeing the emotional reactions and how it's really tapping into wounds from the past, even wounds from 400 years ago, or wounds from the cases in 2015 and 2017, when we were seeing a lot of situations happen all over the country and protests. What message do you have for, based on your work, what message do you have for Black men right now that are trying to come to terms with their raw emotions?
The one thing that I would say to our Black men in all of our communities across the nation is, be open to talking about it. I think we need to have more support groups. We need to have more community conversations where we can tell our Black men that it's okay to open up and share. It doesn't show that it's a sign of weakness, because there's so much anxiety as an African American. I mean, even as an African American woman, when I see the cops, you know, there's a heightened level of anxiety and stress for me. You know, I've been pulled over before, so I can't imagine what it's like being a Black man in America and having to even interact with the police. Not all cops are bad, but certainly we've seen what has happened. Right. And more than often, our Black men are being killed, and they're being wrongfully accused, and it's just so much going on. So their level of anxiety is probably on 2,000 right now, right? Just even being Black in America, waking up every day and walking outside your house, going jogging, you know, pumping gas, you know, whatever. It's a scary time for our Black men, and the PTSD and the trauma that they've experienced is very real. So I would encourage them to seek therapy. Mm-hmm. Even, you know, sometimes maybe finding a therapist that look like you, someone that can understand what's going on from a cultural perspective may be really good. So that's why I suggest, you know, going to therapyforblackgirls.com. It doesn't mean that it's just for women, but there are a lot of men and women clinicians that are featured on there. That's not to say you can't go to a therapist that doesn't look like you, but I think you need someone that can understand what's going on within your community and within your culture and be able to help you through that. So now more so than ever, our Black men need to be okay with seeing a therapist and being okay with talking about it and opening up. I can't remember this young man's name, but he owned a lot of barbershops, and he was doing a barbershop tour going around in African-American communities, getting the men to talk about mental health, getting them to talk about the trauma that they've been experiencing. So again, now more so than ever, is our Black men have to step up and talk about it and share their experiences with one another so that we can help heal each other.
And for anyone joining right now, tell us about how they can get in touch with Silence the Shame, how they can donate, how they can volunteer for any events you have going on. Is there a number they can text, which I already know? Is there a website? Give us that information so that anyone who's tuned in right now can stay connected to your initiative.
Sure, thank you. So you guys can stay connected with Silence the Shame by following us on Instagram at SilenceTheShame.com. On Facebook and Twitter, it's at SilenceTheShame. Also, I would suggest you going to our YouTube page under Silence the Shame TV. We have some really great panel discussions that we filmed in the past, like with people like David Banner, even the one that CeeLo was on, you know, where you talk to us afterwards. So we have a lot of great content. We also have a podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. And we have one, speaking of Black men, it's called Men Get Your Mind Right. And so we have some African-American clinicians that are on there. So it's just so much really great information that we have. So I encourage you guys to really tap into some of the resources that we already have and content that's out there. Also, we shout out to a lot of the DJs. DJ Fly Guy is going to be doing a virtual fundraiser for us today. Yeah, so you can check it out. You can follow me at Shanti404. I just posted the flyer. And then just go on our website if you want to volunteer. Let us know what you're interested in. Of course, most of our work is virtual right now, but we can certainly use the help, and we're trying to get our Silence the Shame army together so we can continue to take this messaging out and really impact the world.
Mm-hmm. And you know, there's a huge intersection between hip hop and mental health. For so long, you know, growing up in Atlanta, I learned English as a second language, and hip hop gave me that avenue to really, you know, realize what the everyday language was, or the culture, the civil rights history of Atlanta. And one thing from, you know, my childhood that I can remember is there was always a tone of healing in hip hop, right? One of the first songs I fell in love with is In Due Time by Outkast. Mm-hmm. You know, keep your faith in me, don't act impatiently, you'll get where you need to be in due time. Even Big Crit's song, The Vent, you know, that's an open diary right there. For so long, the songs were part of the artist's healing process, right?
Yeah, I think 100%. The one thing that I always loved, particularly about Southern hip hop, it kind of reminded me of like the Negro spirituals, right? That our ancestors would, you know, sing during slavery, and it was, you know, born out of a place of healing, and us not really being able to do anything on our own, right? We couldn't really get out into the community, so we had the little small church, and our ancestors would sing in the fields so that they could even just get through the day, right? It was almost like that music was therapy for them. Right. And like music has also been used as a form of therapy for years. You can Google and do all types of research to find the healing properties where music can help you towards decreasing your anxiety and your depression. And it's a great form of self-care. And so, yes, it's only fitting that a lot of our rappers, would continue in that tradition, whether it was from Negro spirituals to, 8 bars, and giving us all this healing, empowerment lyrics and everything. And so one of the songs that I love was just Get Up, Get Out and Get Something, from Outkast and Goody Mob. And that always, to
Don't
me,
let the days of your life pass by.
And to me, it's like, get up, get out, and get some therapy. The same thing. You can kind of equate it, to whatever you want. It's about healing. It's about self-care. It's about wellness, even though we might not have talked about it in that context, but I certainly equate it to a form of self-care and wellness. And, just shout out to Big Crit. Big Crit has actually participated in one of our Silence the Shame talks. We did a fireside chat with him talking about him getting over his issues with substance abuse, and just so proud of the work that he's been doing. And we've even talked to Royce 5'9", and he has a lot of great songs, and that you can kind of relate to from a wellness perspective. And so, yeah, I mean, hip hop and mental health, it's all a part of the same story, and the love language for wellness.
Shout out to Goody Mob. So people in the comments are saying they need a remix. Get up, get out, and get therapy. You think you can make that happen?
Hey, I like that. I'm gonna have to call Gip. We might have to get that going.
You're a powerful woman. One phone call and they're in the studio. I mean, it's self-quarantine anyway. Might as well, right?
That's right. That's right.
I'm so glad that you found your purpose of advocacy. In your moments of, you have been through a lot. And I'm so glad you found that purpose of advocacy, because you've been really able to change lives. What is one message you've received that really sticks out to you over the years, in recent years, where you felt like, wow, God is using me? What is one message you got from someone who you helped transform their lives that puts a smile to your face to this day?
I mean, it's a couple that come to mind. There's some people that, I've been helping through, whether it's through grief or, their husband was depressed. But for people to tell me like, my husband is still here because of you, or my son started going to therapy because of you. I can't tell you the private messages and DMs and texts that I receive. And it truly is humbling. And, I'll be walking and, when we were flying, going through the airport, and people would say, hey, you're the Silence the Shame lady. And thank you for your work. Thank you for your advocacy. I wasn't thinking about getting help until I saw you speak out. And I mean, it's too many to name, but I know we are moving the needle. And I do know that this work is bigger than me. And so I give God all the glory for allowing me to have my ministry and my purpose right now. And I'm just grateful to, yourself and people like, that work within Vibe Magazine and Daytwan to, just allow me to be on and talk about this, because it really is what I'm supposed to be doing. And, like I said, excuse me, like I said, I'm excited about, what we're doing every day, but it's so much more that we want to do. Right. So we're just staying prayerful and focused and hoping that, somebody will see the work that we're doing and want to partner and really help us to amplify our efforts and hire a bunch of people and take this movement around the world.
How do you right now balance taking on the needs of so many people who need you and balancing your own mental wellness? How do you kind of keep that balance going right now?
That's a great question. My pastor, Dr. Warnock, shared with me this notion of the wounded healer. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I am still wounded in a lot of ways, and I'm still processing through a lot of my own grief and a lot of my own emotions. Every single day is a different day. So I wake up from a place of gratitude each morning, and I try to start my day in prayer. And then, I try to connect with loved ones or family members that I need to reach out to. Hey, Kenny Burns, love you too. So I try to connect with people. And then if I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed, I'll just go and take a break. I'll go outside and take a walk, because I love being outside in nature. I love the sunshine. It's a healing property in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And then I also learned that sometimes, like, I had a couple of things that I needed to do this week, and I said, no, I can't do it this week. I'll have to do it next week, because continuously talking about this can be really heavy for me. Right. And so I have to try to find things that I enjoy doing, like listening to music and, social distancing in a parking lot with some cousins that I enjoy seeing. and doing something that's not always talking about mental health. I do have to have my own, you know, breaks, if you will. And then learning that no is a complete sentence.
To figure out, you know, how to say no is a decade-long process for a lot of people.
And for so many years, I was yes, 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 yes. You know, whatever the artist needed, whatever the label needed. You know, I felt like I was even sacrificing time with my family because it was just work, work, work. And now, you know, hi, Cayman Kelly. I never understood. I need to get on your show, Cayman. I never understood what, you know, self-care and work-life balance meant. I mean, of course, it's hard now because work and life is in the same space right now. We're working virtually with COVID-19. But at the same time, you know, it really is about creating a balance in your life. And the one thing I'll say to everybody on here today is don't be afraid to set boundaries, you know, within your home, within your circle of friends. You know, your space and your time and your life is your time. You have to be unapologetic about boundaries in your life, now more so than ever.
And a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to go to therapy and then I'm going to be fixed just like that. When you said the wounded healer, those 3 words are so powerful. But tell us about how it's a marathon. You know, it's not like a medicine you can take and all of a sudden you feel better. Tell us about that marathon, because you're still on your marathon as well.
That's right. Shout out to the late Nipsey. It is definitely not a sprint. It is a marathon. And you know, oftentimes, you know, a lot of my friends are clinicians and they say, look, I can't just, you know, snap my fingers and you'll be healed. People think that therapy is like magic or something. That's not the case. It takes a lot of work to unpack the layers and unpack the trauma and dealing with what you're going through. So you have to commit to therapy like anything else. Like, if you set a goal for yourself and you want to lose some weight, what do? You have to sometimes do food prep. You have to make sure that you're working out X amount of days a week, that you're incorporating water into your diet. It's no different when you go to therapy. It is, yes, it is a practice. It is a whole process. And so it becomes more so a way of life, right? Therapy as a lifestyle, as opposed to therapy as a one-off.
And tell us about, you said it earlier on, but let's say it again. What do you have coming up with Silence the Shame? How did you come up with that name again? I think I asked you earlier, but I'm going to ask you again.
So I was doing a radio interview with Ryan Cameron when he used to be on V103 in Atlanta.
Ryan. I interned with Ryan.
Yeah, and I'm so glad he's getting better. We've been praying for his speedy recovery. But he was on V103 in 2015 on the morning show, and I was on there, and we were talking about Bobby's Christina and things that were going on in her life. And then we just kind of started talking about our own personal lives, and I was sharing about how my dad had taken his own life. So we ended up getting on the subject of mental health. And I said, yeah, you know, we shouldn't really be scared to talk about it. We should just silence the shame. And so it just kind of rolled off of my tongue. And I was like, okay, God, all right, I hear you. I hear you. And so I ended up just creating a hashtag out of it. And it's funny, I was looking back through some of my texts that I had sent to Ryan in March of 2019. And I just put hashtag silence the shame. I said, come on, let's break the internet. So I had a vision in March of 2019. And that was about 5 or 6 months before I even contemplated taking my own life. So wellness was very top of mind for me. So even though I was educating myself and learning about it, I still went to that dark place in that dark moment because I wasn't going to therapy at that time. So it's, you know, it's something that I know that, you know, for the rest of my life, I think I'm well now, but I do think that I will continue to heal. I will continue to learn. I will continue to grow through this process. And if I ever feel like, you know, I get to a point where I need antidepressants again, I'm not embarrassed to do it. You know, losing my sister unexpectedly last year scared me because I wasn't quite sure how I would handle it. And because I had suicidal ideation before, I was like, okay, Lord, like, you got to wrap your arms around me because this has been the most difficult thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I ended up going through a program called Grief Share, griefshare.org, and it helped me a lot. So anybody that's lost a loved one that's really, really close to you or a best friend or something, I would encourage you to go to some sort of grief counseling because you need help to process through it.
and you are really carrying on their legacy, even though, you know, you have experienced a lot of tragedy. The fact that you're carrying on that love they left in the world, and to show that their spirits are within you. You are strong because of them. I tell a lot of people all the time, when we see headstones, we see two numbers, born and died, but it's that dash in the middle that really defines your legacy and how much of an impact one human life can make. Same as Nelson Mandela, one human life made a huge impact. Dr. King, Ralph David Abernathy, Hosea Williams. We could keep going on. And I'm so glad you're making a huge impact, because, you know, it's interesting hearing about your success before Silence the Shame.
Well, I wouldn't put my name up there with them, but, you know.
Right. But it's amazing, like, you know, seeing everything come into full circle. And right now we have so many people in Atlanta tuning in, commenting, new face, Kenny Burns, Freshie, we see you. 2 Atlanta women taking over the Vibe magazine IG Live. But yeah, you know, the full circle moment is amazing, because when you're going from one chapter to another, you never know how those chapters are going to have an intersection.
You're absolutely right. And again, I'm just grateful to be able to do the work. I see also in the comments people talking about yoga. Yoga is amazing. There's this breathing technique called the 4-4-8 technique that I learned as a yoga practice. You can breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4, and then exhale for 8 seconds. That really helps. There are also a lot of meditation apps. Some people really have a tough time. I was one of them, trying to even get into meditation. And sometimes the silence can be like fearful for others if things get too quiet. But there's some great apps called Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer, and Smiling Mind. And then I learned about 2 more apps that were actually created from people of color. One is called Liberate, and the other one is called Eternal Sunshine. So, you know, make sure that you're doing as much as you can and making self-care a part of your daily regimen. One of the things that we do also at Silence the Shame is, pre-COVID, we were doing Silence the Shame Saturdays, where we would have free 1-hour wellness activities for the community. So now we're just doing them virtually. So tomorrow at 11 a.m. on the Silence the Shame IG, we're going to have a 1-hour meditation and mindfulness session with Tia from the pause practice. So, you know, make wellness a part of your life. It really, you know, it will change your life for the better.
And, you know, coronavirus, social distancing, quarantine kind of heightens people's relationship with their own mind, because they don't have the activities to keep them busy. They don't have that routine. What more is needed during quarantine to make sure you're internally strong?
I think it's important that we try to maintain some sort of regular schedule. What has worked I find that I'm working harder now in quarantine than I did pre-COVID, because, you know, I'm fighting to just, you know, keep focused and staying on track of, you know, how I feel, mind, body, and soul. And so I wake up, you know, I take my shower, I put on clothes as if I'm going out. The other thing that I've been doing is to try to utilize different rooms in my home, because you got to break up the monotony. And for some people that even live in a small apartment, like maybe you work in the bedroom one day, maybe you take it to the den. So I try not to do the exact same thing in the exact same space every single day. Even like rearranging photo frames and rearranging my kitchen a little bit. You got to keep things fresh so that you can keep your mind happy and keep things moving, so that you know, that you have some level of control, if you will. The other thing is taking 30-minute breaks in between your work schedule while you're working remotely, because it gets to be a lot, because you might be on back-to-back Zoom calls, or, you know, even if it's 30-minute breaks or 1-hour breaks, get up and walk around or do something, or call a friend, or walk outside and, you know, walk down the block and come back. But anything you can do to kind of keep your emotions going in a positive way. The other thing I would say is getting enough sleep. It's really important. I know it's easier said than done. I've heard a lot of people say that through the quarantine and the pandemic, they're staying up late at night because their mind's racing. And so maybe taking a hot shower at night can really help you, and utilizing lavender and different things that can calm you down. Listening to those apps, that could really help a lot. But you need your sleep to be able to be productive, you know, throughout the week.
That's amazing. One more time, let's say how everyone can get in touch with Silence the Shame, if you can let them know one more time.
Sure. So you can visit our website at SilenceTheShame.com. And also, even if you want to text any small donation, $1, $5, anything. You can text the word silence to 707-070. Or you can follow us on Instagram at SilenceTheShame, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter at SilenceTheShame. We have a podcast under SilenceTheShame on Google Play, iTunes, and SoundCloud. And check out our content on YouTube. Subscribe to our page at SilenceTheShame TV.
And I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything we didn't touch on today that you want to make sure that the audience is aware of?
So again, you know, today we have DJ Fly Guy that's going to be doing a virtual set for Dance to Donate. On Sunday, Frank Ski from V103 is going to be doing a virtual set from 1 to 3 p.m. for Silence to Shame.
Amazing.
And then tomorrow, Kwame, the rapper Kwame, is going to be doing something on his page. We have also on our website several webinars. We've been doing free webinars. We did one on grief and loss. We did one on managing relationships and mental health. So check out, again, a lot of the content. And, you know, I think it will really help you during this time.
We really appreciate this conversation. Again, 2 ATLians taking over Vibe magazine. That's amazing. Atlanta always feels like, you know, it doesn't get the credit it deserves, but here we are.
Yes.
Vibe.
Yes. And I've been a fan. I can remember when Vibe magazine first started back in the day with when the magazines was like really large and these iconic photo shoots. And I remember TLC being on the cover and Tretch and so many people. And it's just an honor to see, you know, to be on here today representing Vibe. And I'm just glad to see that the brand is still thriving and doing important work in the community.
Amazing. Shout out to Daytwan. Thank you for inviting me to this interview. Shout out to Christine, always working hard. We appreciate you. We appreciate your advocacy. You are transforming lives. And it's amazing to see everything come into full circle for you. We're going to chat sometime soon about the immigrant story we were talking about and how it can be of help to you as you try to reach out to some of our immigrant communities in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think there's an important conversation that we can do. So June is PTSD Awareness Month. So I'm thinking maybe we can do a webinar in June. Maybe we'll get Vibe on board and we can explore the trauma that exists within the immigrant community.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing because there's not a lot of help specifically for that niche area.
So let's do it. I'll get the clinicians and you can get a few people from a lived experience perspective. And Silence the Shame will curate the webinar. Right.
You know, Clarkston is one of the most diverse, it's one of the most diverse communities in the United States. It's like a 2.7 mile radius community right outside of Atlanta. 100 different languages spoken in that small community.
Wow.
So we can definitely reach out to some of our local communities here in Atlanta to get them involved.
I'm excited.